Welcome to Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Lansing today inside the state capitol, and we are joined by Tom Leonard. He is the Speaker Pro Tem of the House of Representatives. You've been a prosecutor in Flint.
Yep, Brad, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it very much.
And so you are focused on issues surrounding criminal justice. And I want to look at mental health, which may or may not be surrounding criminal justice, but that's the issue. Talk to us about your package on mental health.
Well, I do believe this is a criminal justice issue, and we have to back up just a bit. We have a law on the books in Michigan right now. It's known as Kevin's Law.
Right.
Kevin was a young man, graduate student back in 2000 who was tragically bludgeoned to death as he was on his way home from the University of Michigan, and he was killed by somebody in a rest area bathroom who was a schizophrenic, somebody whose family had tried to get him help. There was no help available, and tragically Kevin passed away and was killed. And a few years later, the legislature passed a law called Kevin's Law, and the best way I can describe this is kind of like a nice home that was built without windows and doors. So the framework, the foundation is there, but it needs a lot of upgrading or amendments to actually make it
So what
usable.
does Kevin's Law do today as we speak?
So unfortunately, because of the way it was rushed and put together, folks really have not been able to utilize it the way they wanted to. For instance, last year in Michigan, there were over 20,000 mental health petitions, and less than 70 of them actually utilized Kevin's Law because it's so difficult
And what's it supposed
to utilize.
to do?
So it's supposed to get those individuals that have been diagnosed with some type of mental illness, get them the treatment that they need. Unfortunately, it has just fallen short. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some amendments. First, the petition process is very convoluted, so it's hard to understand. So one of the amendments that this would bring to Kevin's Law is it would streamline the petition process so that everybody can understand it and put them on one form. Right now, when somebody goes in and they have to petition somebody or a family member that may be suffering from some type of mental illness, there's all this different paperwork that they have to fill out. This would put it on one piece of paper.
And is it looking toward commitment? What's the goal of Kevin's Law?
So those are the other two parts that we're looking to fix. Next, we want to get to earlier intervention. Right now, we're in a situation where we actually have to allow somebody to harm themselves or harm somebody else before we can get them the treatment that they need. And this is a way, one of these amendments would allow for earlier intervention. If the person has been diagnosed with a mental illness and they don't understand their need for treatment, these amendments would allow them to get the help that they need. And I will tell you, Brad, this hit me like a ton of bricks. I used to clerk for the probate judge in Genesee County. Her name is Jenny Barkey. And it's funny, even when I was her clerk and even now as being a representative, she still calls me kid. And when I called her, I said, Judge, tell me about this and why do we need it? And it hit me like a ton of bricks when she said, kid, we live in a world where we actually have to allow somebody to hurt themselves or somebody else before we get them the treatment that they need. Why do we let it go that far? So this would do that. And then last, it would allow for outpatient treatment. Right now, if we're going to get somebody treatment, we actually have to hospitalize that person, which is very intrusive. It's very difficult. It's very expensive. This would allow for outpatient treatment for those that suffer from some type of mental illness.
Biggest challenges, and I know this because I have family members who suffer from severe mental illness, is that they take their medication and they're doing better. And so what happens? I'm doing better. I don't need medication.
Correct.
And they go off their meds and all you know what breaks loose.
And they are totally different people when they are off their medication. So again, this would be individuals who have been diagnosed. So like the example that you gave, somebody that's off their medication, we don't want to hospitalize them.
But if they're outpatient, what can we do, either through the law or otherwise, to just continue to reinforce that the medication, it's as if you have, if you have an infection, you need to take antibiotics. This is a different type of medication.
Well, this would actually allow there to be teeth, because what would happen is if the judge has ordered outpatient treatment and the person's not complying, now they would be violating a court order. So the judge would actually there'd be some teeth in the law. Right now, there's not. So again, this is trying to get people the help that they need before they hurt themselves or somebody else.
And how do you balance, and I ask you this because you are a lawyer, the desire to do what you described with civil rights?
Absolutely.
That's always a dicey proposition.
And I'm glad that you asked that question. This is actually a huge priority, this bill for the Lieutenant Governor. And when he approached me, and we talked about it. I said, Brian, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, I will not take this bill on unless we make certain that all civil liberty protections are in place. And he totally agreed. So under this law, anybody that's being ordered outpatient treatment would be entitled to a jury trial. They would be entitled to a lawyer at the taxpayer expense. They would be entitled to an independent evaluation. So it's not like we're just going to collect people and order outpatient treatment. Any right that a criminal defendant would have, this person would have.
And we have funding for this in place, or that we will have
yes,
funding?
we believe the funding will be there. This is something the executive office is working through, but I've been assured that our local community mental health should be okay in terms of funding.
One of the cruelest criminal acts I think that can ever be perpetrated is against the elderly, who are so often so vulnerable. And it's amazing to me it continues to happen. And you, with your legal background, are looking at elder abuse.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, having been a former prosecutor, I have said government's #1 duty is the protection of its people, particularly those that are most vulnerable, and those being our children, those that are mentally and physically handicapped, and our elderly, as you hit the nail on the head. And we've made great progress in Michigan in regards to children, and I'm so thankful that we've done that.
And but now we're making progress mentally ill.
Yes, but in terms of our elderly, we've really lagged. And I had a situation when I was in the prosecutor's office in Genesee County, a lady who was in her mid-80s. Her son lived up in an apartment above her home, and he had confined this lady to a couch. When the investigators got there, we needed a search warrant to get them into the house. When they got there, it was so bad, Brad, that she was confined to a couch that once they got her off, they picked up the cushions and they were so urine soaked that it was just draining from the cushions. There were maggots, there were bugs on this couch, and unfortunately, he had only committed a reckless act at that point, which was a 4-year felony in the state of Michigan. Once we charged this monster with this crime, we had to actually ask the judge to exceed the sentencing guidelines because he was looking at probation. Well, that is just wrong.
Because it was a first-time offense?
Because it was only a 4-year felony. It was a reckless act that he had committed. It was only a 4-year felony. So what we're looking at doing is giving that 4-year felony some more teeth. That falls under second-degree vulnerable adult abuse, and increase that from a 4 to a 10-year felony.
And what will that do?
It would actually, his prison guidelines, or his guidelines would have actually called for prison at that point. This increases it up to a 10-year felony. And again, as I said, our #1 duty as government officials is to protect our people. And that is so unacceptable when we have a law in the books that allows somebody to take their 85-year-old mother, confine her to a couch the way that he did, and be looking at probation.
We thank you for that. What I want to get a sense, if you can offer this, maybe as a representative or as a former prosecutor, if we're sensing there may be elder abuse, what can we do? What should we do?
Certainly err on the side of caution. Call your local law enforcement officials. This
Is that
example,
who you call? It's the police?
Yep. I mean, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call 911. Now in Genesee County, they actually have an elder abuse division with phone numbers and all that good stuff, that's how we found this lady. She was actually traveling on a public bus, and because of what some people had seen, some of the odors, things like that, they knew that there was a problem, and they called, and we were able to get a search warrant to go into her home. Had they not called that in, she may be dead today. So absolutely err on the side of caution. If you see a vulnerable adult, somebody that's elderly, somebody suffering from some type of mental handicap or mental illness, don't be afraid to call the police if you think something's
These bills are going, or how are they doing?
Well, they were just introduced a couple weeks ago and referred to the Committee on Criminal Justice. I'm hoping we can get a hearing soon, but
so next time you come back, we'll be talking about it.
Absolutely.
His name is Tom Leonard. He is the Speaker Pro Tem in the Michigan House of Representatives. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're inside the Capitol today in Lansing, and this is Charter Local Edition.